they hate. And I know better than to listen to the people who are calling us slaves. I can feel the sunlight shining.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Brian, and this is a special edition of the Lots Project live stream. Last week, Carrie Brown of Strong Roots Resources was in town for a walk out at Delinquent's Gully. We're both kind of working on that project a little bit. We took a nice hike, and then we had dinner with Corey. But a couple times during the day, both while we were out on that walk and then more over dinner, Carrie was telling me about how he is getting started in sheep. I've been kind of watching it on his Telegram channel and his Facebook and YouTube. But he was going into more depth about how he got started and how it's been going for him. And I thought it was just an awesome system, and it was a great model for something that other people could benefit from, learning about it, hearing about it, maybe just discussing the ins and outs of it, and maybe just spitballing how to spread that around. So we said, why not throw it out there in front of a live audience, and we'll get feedback from the audience. We'll have a discussion, but I'd like to just have a chat with Carrie. So here we are. Carrie Brown of Strong Roots Resources, you're over there. Why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself? If somebody in my audience doesn't know you, they just haven't been listening closely enough. But how's it going, man?
Hey, man. I'm doing great, despite multiple days of rain going on here. We're in good order. Yep, I am Carrie Brown. I am a homesteader and kind of a permaculture guy and a plant guy, and just kind of everything nature has always been my jam. And since about 2019, I've been running Strong Roots Resources, which is a property design and consulting company with a strong education element, particularly around land study and foraging classes. Then at the same time, we're out here on our family land in the Knoxville, Tennessee area, where we used to have animals. I should say, when I was growing up, we had animals. We had cows, but there has not really been anything grazing on this property. So for about 30 years. So that's what led to getting the sheep.
Okay. So I kind of knew that you had sheep from your YouTube channel, from the Telegram, from talking to you. But before you had sheep, I didn't know whether, were you looking to get into sheep? Was this an intentional thing? Was there a reason you hadn't done that before? Like, what is the genesis of this? Were you looking for a way to do this, or how did this opportunity come about for you?
I knew I wanted to do it, and I knew it was going to be the right decision to get these pastures back into good shape and to put more regenerative principles to work. But at the time, so we've been back on this family land since 2020. Okay. And so for the past few years, like I said, it's where I grew up. I had a city homestead, and then we returned here in 2020. We needed to get a bunch of other stuff checked off first before I was going to be ready to have ruminants on my day-to-day schedule. So, and a lot of that was, I kind of, it's, you know, how it is when you do your zone 1, you take care of the stuff closest to you first. And the sheep are going to be kind of a zone 2, zone 3 thing. And that meant that there were areas that I needed to do some clearing work so I could actually get fencing in, because there's a lot of overgrowth. There were areas that I kind of wanted to know what was growing in there to make sure I wasn't going to unintentionally poison the sheep. And then probably, and frankly, the biggest holdup was how busy I was. So up until last year, I was keeping a number of property maintenance jobs on my schedule. So that was kind of the other element. I've used property maintenance jobs in terms of mowing and trimming and installation work and maintenance work like that to fund to help grow the educational side of the business. I have scaled that back to where I no longer have those property maintenance contracts, which actually opened up quite a bit of time in my day-to-day to take care of the sheep.
why sheep? Is that something that you've always wanted since you were a little kid? Or you mentioned that your family had cattle on there, cows, at some point. Why sheep?
Probably because they're smaller, they're easier to care for, and they have a really diverse diet. And out here, there are a lot of areas where we don't really have good grass for animals that are dependent upon strictly grass. So I need something that could forage, they say, from nose to feet. So a sheep will look for food anywhere between nose height and on down. And although I've found my sheep are really motivated, and they will raise their head up and they will look around for vines and things like that to eat as well. So I wanted something that could eat a variety of things. I wanted something that was lighter and smaller and easier to manage. If you have a sick sheep, it is easier to manage something that is 75 pounds and not a cow that is 600. And they're, in general, they're just lighter on the land. When I decided that I wanted to do this, I needed to consult with the rest of my family. So we're here with my parents have their own home. My brother has his own home, but we're all on the property together. So there's a lot of, working together and communicating that needs to happen. And I didn't want to bring anything in that would become anybody else's problem. I wanted to be able to be the primary manager of this, and then I get some light assistance here and there as needed. The sheep are just they're just so adaptable. I think that's why I like them the most. They have been as good as, in terms of what they eat and how motivated they are to eat things, at least as good as goats, from what I've observed on other people's properties and heard from goat folks.
Those goat ropers.
Little goat ropers. Yeah.
So you kind of you decided on sheep. Was it ever? How did you come across what you're doing now? Like, was this your first go-to? Was this something that you had on your radar as you were deciding to get sheep? Is this kind of a fallback? How did you come across the opportunity that you're taking advantage of? And then we'll talk about what it is.
Sure. So the lady who owns these sheep that I care for, her name is Marcy Yaden, and she runs a meat-based buying club at her home here in Knox County. And so she partners with a number of farmers and producers to provide meat. And she's a farmer herself, and she has her own animals. But she discovered a few years ago that she could not, that she has a really bad bee sting allergy, like big time anaphylaxis, you're in a world of hurt if you get stung kind of thing. She did not want to give up her sheep, which require a certain amount of, 3 times or, moving 2 or 3 times a week and all kinds of things. You're out there, you're putting in step input, you're just outside a lot. And she didn't want to get rid of them. So she started looking for people who could run those sheep on their own land. And I became aware of Marcy sometime in the summer of 2020, when the local food movement around here really blew up in a good way, when people became concerned about food shortages and the grocery stores and things like that having trouble getting stuff in stock. And her stuff I just literally just watched it blow up online. Just everybody wanted to know where to get a hold of fresh milk, where to get a hold of pasture raised meat, actually locally, not just regional, but literally within the same county. And I knew that she had this program back then. So I actually got to meet Marcy face to face at a community gathering in Strawberry Plains, which is just a little bit east of us. And I talked to her a little bit that day, and I said, I would like to run sheep on my property, and I'm happy to, kind of move forward with you and see what that involves. And it turns out that Marcy is one of the sweetest ladies I have ever met, but she's really scatterbrained, and she will admit to that. So I had to catch up with her again a few months later, emailed her a few times, and I said, I am prepared to do this. Like, I have already I've made sure I have access where I need it. I made sure we can put fence in. I just need the animals, and I need somebody to hold my hand a little bit and kind of teach me the preliminary ropes. And we officially got started in somewhere around mid-August of last year. And we started with a small starter group of about 8, and then we added a few more later, and then we added Primrose the Guardian Donkey sometime like September or so.
That's Corey's favorite. Corey's favorite thing of the whole thing is the donkey.
She's the best donkey in the world, and I never knew I was going to become friends with a donkey, but I love this donkey, so he's great.
So you said you started with 8, and so okay, so how big of an area are we talking here that you're dedicating to the sheep that you're using regularly, that you have if you need it? We talking 2 acres, 5 acres?
I would say about 10 acres that I have access to. In terms of, I don't have to go in clearing privet and honeysuckle and calorie pear and all that kind of fun stuff. So we have 10-ish, I would say. It might even be a little bit less than that. And we started them in an area closest to the cabin. And then I kind of just figured out a route of you just doing a paddock at a time, setting up a paddock. The sizes of the paddocks just vary. It kind of depends on a lot of it. I've been experimenting. So I've run them in like tight paddocks where I move them twice a day. I've run them in much larger paddocks that are like half an acre or an acre. If I'm going to be gone for a couple of days, I'll do that. So that they have plenty to eat. So the way the property is laid out here is a little bit disjointed. There's a few places where I kind of was at a dead end of sorts, and I had to create chutes made from the step-in post and the rolled up fencing to move the sheep from kind of, especially I had to cross a couple of driveways, and I had to cut through, and basically I had to bring them through Mom's front yard. I wasn't going to leave sheep in Mom's front yard, although I don't think she would have cared all that much, but just little things like that. So it's a matter of kind of figuring out the what the route is going to start to look like.
Okay, right. Yeah. I mean, we kind of did the chicken tractors in our field, and it was what zigzag pattern do I want to do so I can get to that other corner that's kind of like off by itself? And if we don't end up on that end, you got to like drag it all the way across the property to get to the new grass. So so about 10 acres. Where do you think you're like at capacity on that? What is your target for number of sheep on that property? Because I mean, I doubt you're starting at that. Like, obviously you want to grow.
Yeah, well, it's funny, when Marcy first came up here, she looked around and she was like, wow, you could run 80 sheep out here. And I was like, I don't know if I want to run that many sheep. I'd say we could probably do about 30 and still and be able to rotate them about the same. I'm also opening up some new access in some places. There's a couple places that I kind of skipped last season that we're not going to skip this year. I could probably get up to 30 and still not have to worry about the parasite cycle and not have to worry about overgrazing, which are kind of the two biggies that we need to be mindful of out here.
Okay. And so how small of a property would you recommend running sheep on? Like, is there like a minimum number you want to do? And like, what size property do you think would need to support that? Obviously, it depends on what kind of forage is on there. But if you're just kind of average, not great, not horrible.
Sure. You could probably do, I mean, even if you have something as small as 3 acres, if it's mostly open and if either it's good grasses and good forage or enough stuff on the shrub level that they can also eat, I would think that you could probably do like 2 ewes and not keep a ram, but just bring in a ram for breeding, and then borrow a ram or whatever. You don't necessarily have to buy one.
Right.
Keep those two ewes. I'll never have an animal by itself. Every animal needs a buddy. So at the bare minimum, 2 to 3 ewes, and then when they have their offspring, if you get a baby ram, maybe that guy's going to go on the table. If you have more females, maybe you grow a little bit, and at that point, you observe what their impact on the land is. And then you start thinking, okay, and there's all kinds of formulas for acreage equals stocking density. Greg Judy explains this really well. Joel explains it really well. But I would say, in my mind, if you have enough grass that you have to mow it, and you're not in an area that you're restricted from doing this, you should probably at least put a ruminant on there for a little while, even if you end up selling it or harvesting it.
Right. Okay, so you said the ewes that they have, is that a once a year cycle? Do they have
I think they can be bred twice a year, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. We are in the first lambing season that I have experienced. We had some a few weeks back right there after all the snow and ice and craziness. And we've got, from what I can tell, 4 that are going to be ready anytime. And so I think they can breed again once they have weaned their lambs. So I think you can do 2 a year. Some people control that really tightly. Others, they leave rams and ewes together all the time, and mating happens when it happens, and birth happens when it happens.
I don't know what Kyle's talking about having. Oh, he must be talking about.
Yeah, he's talking about. For those of us who are into rotational grazing, we can get a little crazy about it, because there are times where literally today, I was down on my hands and knees looking at an area in the pasture, which prior to having sheep has always been bare. I do not know, nothing would grow there. I don't know why. There was no reason for it. It was just a bare spot. And I looked at it today, and it's got chickweed coming up. And I'm like, yes, the seed bank is coming through, because all that fertilizer that those sheep are laying down, things will start to wake up. So that is very exciting. And I literally would go to sleep every night pretty much through all of summer and fall thinking about how my brain was 2 or 3 paddocks ahead. I'm like, okay, in 2 days I need to set up this. That's probably what he's talking about. This paddock here, and I got to watch out for this thing here, and whatever. I mean, it's just for those of us whose brain is constantly 10 steps ahead. Rotating them can get like that. Yes, it can.
It looks like Blakesley Acres says you could get 3 cycles in 2 years. I think, and that's what we determined was it's 1.5 cycles a year.
Got it.
So,
right.
So you started, you said, with 8, and we didn't really kind of go in. We kind of touched on it, but these are the sheep you have right now are Marcy's kind of now. Kind of.
So Marcy puts her sheep on other people's land. She provides the hay, the fencing materials, the fence charger, basically everything that is needed to keep sheep alive in terms of materials. She provides all of that for up to 3 years. After 3 years, we will, if I decide to continue doing the sheep, 50% of the offspring we will get to keep. And then Marcy will take her sheep and they will go to another property. I'm sure there's probably ways to renew contracts and stuff, but generally speaking, she's kind of in demand for this sort of thing. So at that point, those adult sheep will move to their next property. And Marcy gets to decide who goes to the meat locker, who gets to keep making more sheep, and that sort of thing. So
how old before they're ready to breed?
I don't think it's very old. I have heard as, under a year. I have heard cases of where a young ram bred an ewe and they didn't want that to happen, but it happened. So I think I don't want to say under a year. And to be honest, I actually have not dug all that deeply into like the breeding patterns of sheep, because this has just been like I just watch it and see what happens. Because
that's perfect.
Yeah, it's just all observation for me. And plus, it's like everything. I'm not saying everything I've read so far has been wrong, but a lot of what I've read so far hasn't been all that relevant to what I've noticed myself. Like all these things, my friend Don says, sheep don't read books. They don't care what you write about. They go do what they want.
Right.
My biggest thing with these sheep is make sure they obey the fence. If anybody gets it in their head that they want to get out of the fence, that sheep doesn't get to stay sheeping. we pull that out of the genetic pool really quick, unless it's an error that I'm making in terms of like the fence isn't strong enough or the charger's off. But if everything's kosher and checks out and that sheep is like, don't care about this wire anymore, I'm getting out. We had to do that earlier in the year. A mama ewe and her baby ram went to market because they didn't want to stay in the fence. So
okay, yeah, this story you gotta tell the story about this ewe and this ram, because this is very, very interesting. A, that you ended up with them, and B, how like after you put the dots together, I was like, oh well, of course.
So are you talking about the one where I had to catch them?
Well, no, that, and but also, how did they end up like so entrenched in wanting to get out of the
yeah. So they were basically semi-wild when they came out here. This mama ewe and her little baby, which I think was a ram, they had been on another property for quite some time, like over a year, and when it was time to load everybody and move to the next spot, they didn't want to load. And they were just out in the great wide open. There was a creek that ran through there, but there wasn't much fencing, and they just could not get this thing to load. And so they were just like, whatever. And the property owner was like, I think it was basically like a hunting property that wasn't even really like full-time manned or anything. And so, I started telling Marcy about this sheep and the baby that just did not care about the fence and just kept getting out. They wouldn't go far. They would just go to the other side and go stand in the wood line. And she was like, oh, I gave you a crazy one. I'm sorry. Turns out that this sheep and her baby had basically been, running solo with no other flock members for quite some time. And then they returned for some reason, if I'm remembering the series of events correctly, they returned with the trailer, and all of a sudden they decided to get in the trailer. And so they wound up at my place. I guess maybe Marcy thought, oh, okay, well, they'll load now. They'll obey the fence. But no, they didn't want to have the first thing to do with that fence. And of course, one of the issues with that is it can teach the others also to get out, and then you can have a real problem. So we have a zero tolerance for sheep getting out. Yeah. And so when this was just a couple of weeks into having these sheep, like literally the first 2 or 3 weeks. And I was talking to Marcy about it. I'm like, they're not going far, but I just can't get them to stay in the fence. I said, I'll try to figure out a way to catch them. So I had this, about a 6x8 mobile chicken shelter out there in the general vicinity. And I enticed them in. I had a swinging door on the side, just like a regular, like a cellar door. And I was able to entice them in with the almighty bucket of sweet feed. And they went in there, and I was hiding around the corner, and I ran as fast as I could, slammed the door shut, locked them in there. I think I said a choice series of words to them when I did that. And I sent Marcy a picture, and I said, they're ready to be picked up at your convenience. And and of course, those poor sheep, I mean, they had a cow when they realized what had happened, and they, bounced around forever. And I thought they were going to kill themselves, but I'm pretty sure they wound up on somebody's table not long after that.
Kyle said, God bless the white buckets. You told me yours is red.
Yep. Ours is red. We have one red bucket on this property, and that is the only thing that bucket is used for, because if sheep see a red bucket, they know what's up. And they've learned to follow me in the red bucket. So I have to be careful I don't just take them sweet feed just any old time. Like it's a very special treat, or I'm trying to get them to do something. Usually moved. Yeah, backwoods, humanely raised and verbally abused. Yep.
All of them saying it.
I said some words. I did. I mean, it was August and it was hot, and I was already kind of in a bad mood. So, yeah.
I didn't think you got into a bad mood.
I'm Irish, in case you couldn't tell. So, yeah, I have my moments, but I'm 90% nice guy, but I do have my moments.
Well, they said the IRA was never putting in car bombs. It was just angry Irishmen exploding every once in a while.
Yeah, something like that.
So you got into this last August, I think you said, and we're now here in the middle of February. You just went through lambing season, or you still are. How is the one doing? Is she still holding on to them? The big wide one you showed us when last Friday?
Big Mama is one wide load. I did notice today she's starting to get the hollowing just below her hip bones, which they say is a sign that the babies have moved down and are closer to ready to head on out. But I mean, I check on them 3 or 4 times a day, and I just keep going out there expecting to find lambs, and she's just like, no, just not ready yet.
Do you think she's gonna have twins?
I'm sure she'll at least have twins. Marcy has told me that it's pretty normal for them to have twins and triplets. So you grow your flock real fast. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
So
okay. All right. So you started with 8. You started with 8 of Marcy's sheep, and then you got more, and then you had some trouble.
Yes. So we added more that were from a separate flock that had been on a different property, also Marcy's sheep. They were going to go, whoever was prepared to be their caretaker, something happened at the last minute and they weren't going to be able to do it. So Marcy said, hey, do you mind if we just throw them all together? I said, I don't care, moving 5 sheep, move 12, who cares? But after the flocks had been combined for a couple of weeks, we started to get 6 sheep. And it took us a little while to figure out what it was, because this had never happened on Marcy's watch. So after some testing and dealing with UT vet school, they had a barber poleworm, which is a parasite that embeds itself in their last stomach and basically causes anemia, and eventually the sheep just bleeds out internally. Unfortunately, sheep are really good at hiding that they're unwell until they're just about dead. So we lost like 2 almost like right away. They went down. And then at that point we were starting, when it's one, it's like, okay, this can happen. And Marcy had warned me. She said, when sheep change properties, they may die, and we don't always know why. And we didn't know if this was a parasite that was endemic to our soil here that they picked up, but we think it was probably already present with this younger group, the second group that came out here. They're younger than the others, and when we combined, that meant everybody got exposed because it's passed through fecal matter. So Marcy did a really good job of helping me navigate that, because she said, you have not done anything wrong. Because I was like, crap, I'm killing your sheep. I've like got sheep going down left and right. We did decide to medicate with a antiparasitical that is one of the ones on the market that's still supposed to deal with this, because at this point I think we had 4 that had died. One had been sent off to UT for necropsy. That's how we figured out what we were dealing with. So we weren't just flinging meds at stuff that we didn't know what we had. So we confirmed that. We did the medicating. That's always a fun time, getting sheep into a trailer, wrestling, shoving a syringe in their mouth. It's a lot of fun. And Marcy's like, Carrie, this is the most management I've done of these sheep ever. None of these sheep had any medication for years. So after that, we had 1 more die, and that sheep was already weak at that point. So it was probably going to die anyhow. And this was maybe late September, I want to say, maybe early October. And then we've been so far so good since.
Okay.
And we'll have to see. We are discussing maybe doing another application of medication before the weather warms up, just in case they get re-exposed somehow.
So how many do you have? How many adults do you have right now?
There are 11 adults. That includes Ramsey the Ram, and 2 baby ewes and 1 baby ram.
So 2 baby ewes and 1 baby ram from 2 adults or 3 adults?
Yes. One had twins and one had a single.
And you think, well, at least one's. Hopefully, she's pregnant. If she's not pregnant, she shouldn't carry on on the property. Are there any more that you think?
4 look pregnant to me right now. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm expecting at least 4 sheep to have theirs. That's whenever they feel it's convenient to have them. So, yeah.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, and then another 6 possibly.
Yeah, the ones that look smaller to me, it's possible that they've been bred, but they were bred since they've been out here, so they are just earlier in gestation. I mean, all I can say is that Ramsey takes his job very seriously, and he seemed to be very thorough with his job. So I expect that there will be more, coming in the fall.
Okay, so 3 years. 3 years, and then you split the offspring that have been born on your property.
Yep.
So that sounds like, by the math, that you'll probably end up with the same amount you started with, if things go well, approximately the same amount. Because if Blakely Acres is right, and they do 3 cycles every 2 years, you have some loss. And then she takes her half. You have your rams that get killed off. You should end up with the same starters flock as you started with.
That sounds about right, and that works.
What if you don't make it the 3 years? So what if you're like, hey, this really isn't for me? I mean, is this something where you just do it until they can place them? Is it like you sign up for 3 years and it's 3 years? Or is the owner of the sheep like cognizant of the fact is if you're giving up, you're not going to be the best caretaker for their animals?
Yeah. So in the 1-page agreement that I signed with Marcy, it does say on there that if at any point we are not going to be able to continue to be caretakers, we basically have to give them as much notice as possible, because it can take a while to get them placed elsewhere. And that's kind of where I think Marcy saw how much thought I had put into it. And so I think that takes some of the stress out of somebody backing out at the last minute. So yeah, like I can't remember exactly how much notice, but it's like, 30 to 60 days to have another property ready to go for them.
But that's reasonable. That's reason for all the benefit that you're getting. And I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. Is you're getting so much benefit out of this, as far as it's like an apprenticeship.
Yes.
You have the resource there of somebody that's been in it for a long time that was able to kind of guide you through medical issues. You have the person that's fronting the sheep, which is a huge expense up front.
Yes.
And for your work and your land, you're getting your flock started. Or if you don't want it after 3 years, 3 years is a great learning curve period where you're like, okay, well, do I want to do this, or can we just eat these and move on?
Yeah. At this point, I can't imagine not doing them, but of course we never know what life may throw at us. I'm like I said, I'm already seeing the pasture improvement. I'm seeing so many benefits, and even just things like they make my mom happy. Like right now where I've got them, they're kind of between my brother and mom and dad's place, which are like a little downhill and to the west of our spot here on top. And, mom goes out there and talks to them and takes some snacks and takes carrots and celery to Primrose and everything. And she loves that donkey as much as I do. So just it's kind of been a hit around here. Like my brother and his girlfriend go up there and they visit with them. So, you know, when I first did this, I wasn't sure how, like nobody really cared that I was doing it, but I wasn't sure if people were going to be like into it. But when we have our gatherings up here, everybody wants to come see the sheep and hear about the sheep. So it's been beneficial on multiple levels. And Marcy has been an amazing mentor. She's been doing this for so long. She's very, she doesn't get her knickers in a twist over things. Cause when we had 5 sheep die in the summertime, and I was trying not to have a cow because I was, you know, still worried, you know, we were going to lose the sheep altogether. Either they were all going to go down or, you know, Marcy was going to be like, well, Carrie's killing my sheep, so I'm going to take them back now. Thank you very much. But no, she was like, look, we're going to wind up with stronger animals, even though we decided to medicate. She said, we're going to wind up with more adapted, stronger animals with more resistance than if, you know, if this hadn't happened. She said, it just happens sometimes. And she said, I've gone a long time without issues, longer than most people go. So she was like, yeah, eventually something can happen. So,
so you need someone that's got some experience. You want someone on the, so when you told me about this, I was like, this is like ideal. And I was thinking like like when we did the rabbits, and the cycle is so long, the investment up front to learn, if you want to have it be anything in a relatively short period of time, just by the numbers, you have to kind of go large at the beginning to have the breeding stock, you know, just in the time cycle, that year long, letting them be a year before you breed them. It's a lot of investment up front to find out if you want to do it or not. I think being able to learn from somebody, have them provide the animals and do that and really get that education is just so invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. I can't imagine having, you know, if I had just gone out and just found a couple sheep from somewhere, bought them off Facebook or whatever, threw them out there. I mean, I would have been really, really out of sorts if the same thing had happened with the parasite and they start going down. Because I probably the biggest thing is like learning how to handle them, like physically manage them. That continues to improve, and that's just because I interact with them a lot. That was a big thing with the donkey too. She was so skittish. She was so scared. But now she wants me to hug her, which is pretty awesome. So, you got
her harness back on, or her bridle back on it, right?
I did. I decided to take it off again because it's a little too big for her, and it started rubbing a spot still on a different part of her face, but it kind of rubbed the spot. So I was like, girl, I'm just going to get you one that fits and maybe a color that looks good on you. But she let me put it on her. So if I needed to put it on her and start working her with a lead when we're out of the current spot that they're in, which is, there's a lot of underbrush. When we're back out in the open, I'm going to work with her more and, you know, get her on a lead and just, but I mean, she follows me even if I don't have snacks. Like she's decided that I'm okay.
So I think a lot of people are kind of aware of this, but if not, like donkeys are pretty good guardian animals.
Yeah. That's why we have her. I don't know if that was her job where she came from. That was never really clear to any of us. I don't think. Marcy drove out there to pick up some donkeys and showed up to something that was apparently not exactly as described. But she was like, well, we've driven all these hours, so let's throw some donkeys in the trailer. And Primrose is the one that came to us. And there's a lot of debate about out there, if you get on the forums and the Facebook and whatever, about donkeys and sheep, because a lot of people say that there are donkeys, and I don't know if they're saying this is with male or female or if it matters, but you know, Primrose is a lady. They will say that at lambing time, the donkeys can get violent. Well, when these lambs came about, and they practically come out of the womb jumping around. I was standing out there in the snow watching this, and Primrose was standing as still as could be, and these two little lambs were just bouncing all around her feet, zipping around her feet, rolling around, falling over, and everything. And she was just standing there, just watching them the whole time. And then when she was ready to move, she lifted her hoof so slowly, and then watched where she put it down. And I was like, that donkey's more careful than I am. So I think we're going to be okay. And, I just show her the respect and give her affection and thank her for her good work. And she's, so far so good.
Do you think she's pregnant?
We think so. Either that or she's just been eating really good out here. But her weight gain.
Carrie's got a brand new friend that gets a lot of treats.
Yeah. She looks like she is by the shape of her abdomen. Yeah, she looks like she probably is. And Marcy thinks so. Her husband Jeff thinks so. And they did say that she had been exposed to a male before they picked her up. So donkey gestation is like 13 months.
Oh, okay.
So it's a while. Yeah.
Carrie's going to be going through labor with the donkey.
Yeah, I'll probably worry about her more than anything. Yeah.
So the sheep have been pretty much taking care of themselves other than moving them, it sounds like.
Yeah. The most time I had in them was when we had to medicate and deal with, illness. But beyond that, through the growing season, so, spring, summer, and fall, I'm just moving them every few days, depending upon paddock size, my schedule, that sort of thing. I've got most of the, all the fencing is temporary. So I just roll it up, put in the step in post, string it out. I've got it to where I can get it knocked out pretty quick. And I've now got pretty much all of my grounding rods in place. When I was setting up a brand new paddock every time, I was setting a new ground rod and a T-post. So that takes a little more time. But now that those are pretty much squared away, I may need to add one or two here and there as I kind of dial things in. But that kind of more time-consuming stuff is done. We just grab a feed bucket and shake it, and they come on over. Most of the time, we've had a few shenanigans. Primrose took a brief tour of the farm at one point when I spooked her accidentally. I'm not as worried about that now. That was early on, but just learning their little quirks and how to work with that is kind of a big deal.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's with anything, really. If you observe them long enough, you know how they react to you, so you know what to do to make them do what you want, or hopefully a better chance of doing what you want, I guess.
Yeah.
How many have you had any of the lamb?
Like to eat?
Yeah.
No, I haven't actually. As silly as this is, I actually need to buy a membership into Marcy's Meat Buying Club. It just happens that we've kind of been set up with how we get our meat through our local farmers, and we've kind of had it that way for a few years. But really, she's no further to go get stuff from there than the others that we visit. So I'm sure we'll actually get onto her. You're basically buying a share, not unlike raw milk shares. You're basically buying a share, and that keeps everything above board and all that good stuff.
Well, right. And so then this transaction with you is just strictly there's nothing exchanged, really.
No money exchanges hands on this at all. There's been a few times where I've picked up some additional supplies and some sweet feed and some mineral, and I make a copy of the receipt, and she reimburses me. And it's,
I mean, that's just like when you're babysitting somebody's animals. Yeah. And it basically is that you're babysitting her animals for 3 years, and when she picks them up, she just forgets to take some of them.
I've not heard it put that way, but you are correct. And I think we should rename it, babysitting the sheep. I am babysitting the sheep, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. I think it's a model that could work with other animals, if I'm not mistaken. that have that kind, like pigs. Kyle and Blakesley Acres in the comments probably could think that through quicker than I could, but goats, I think all these are similar in their gestation lengths and kind of the model of having some, culling some, raising breeders, and kind of moving it through that.
Yeah, it's easily replicable. One of my community members in the Maryville area, I was out on their property last spring, and they knew that their neighbor across the street had sheep, and they had several beautiful acres that needed a ruminant to come over there and eat. And so they just made friends and went over there, and the guy said, have a couple, showed him how to set up the fencing, is available when he has questions. And it's just doing the neighborly thing. It doesn't have to be complicated at all.
Right. If you're doing this with someone, you said you have a 1-page agreement. I mean, you probably want to make sure there's some sort of expectations, be clear on things. You're a different type of guy, man. Like in all the best ways, you really understand what you're getting into. That's not always the case from both sides. You really probably want to set expectations out there and have it up front. Yeah.
And it's pretty clear, you can on this document, it's pretty straightforward. It's not overly complex or anything, but I'm sure like we do with most people, when you meet somebody, you're able to size them up pretty quickly. Marcy could tell that I was motivated to do the right thing, and then I wasn't going to go behind her back and sell them at the sale barn or something crazy like that. I mean, I don't even really have a way to transport them, so they're just here.
They're there until she comes and gets them.
yeah. I mean, I really don't even have anything I could move them in easily. This is probably it's so simple, it's silly, really. But I think as long as you can build a trusting relationship up front, then start small and work your way out. And you're right. I think you could do this with really any kind of animal. I mean, if somebody wanted to try backyard chickens, have even if you build little movable coops, drop off the coop, drop off some birds. If they hate it after a month, go pick everybody up. I mean, it's just you could do it for rabbits. You could do it for all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing with someone that's in it. So somebody like Marcy, on Marcy's side, on the provider side, if you're established in it and this is providing the animals and the fencing isn't a big deal, because if you were going to expand that much on your own property, you'd need it anyway. Mm-hmm, so if you're trying to expand, you're just expanding in a different location with the same thing you'd be doing on yours. So it's kind of a no-brainer for them. They get the multiplier of you with the labor, and then they still end up getting half the results.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, we cleaned out a little 3-sided shed to be able to store some hay in. We could have just thrown it under a tarp if we absolutely had to, but I had it available, so I made that work. We haven't really had to do a ton of infrastructure changes, and everything that I've done, I wanted to do anyhow. It was in the plans. We just reprioritized a few things to be able to accommodate the sheep.
Do you get to keep the fencing when the sheep are gone?
All the fencing that Marcy bought will go back to her. I've bought some of my own that I've kept separate, but yeah.
That makes sense.
Out will go back.
So it gives you a time period though to kind of work that into the budget, yes. Understand what's working for you and what you like and what you want more of, I suppose. And yeah, that 3-year cycle you understand, first of all, how much you actually need. You can read 1 million Facebook posts and blog articles about how much you need to rotate sheep, and you're always short. You never have what you think you need. So you really get the physical on hand and understand the wear cycle on some of it and how durable it is. And
Yep. I know I'm going to go back and buy exactly the charger that I've been using that they brought out here because it has given me no trouble whatsoever. And it's very straightforward. I've heard a lot of people having trouble with certain brands of products. I cannot think of the name brand of this one right off the top of my head. It's not the Premier One system. It's a brown box. It's solar powered. So that was one of the things I told Marcy. I was like, we're going to have a solar charger out here. I cannot run power all over the place. And and it works great. And it's even been fine. Even when we're dreary like this, it still holds enough of a charge to get us through several days of minimal sunshine.
do you find that they're easy? They don't try to get, like you said, just that one pair, the U and the Ram that wanted to get out. So they probably don't necessarily need a whole lot of charge to begin with. It sounds like they pretty much like to obey the fence.
Yeah, like this one's only like a 1 joule charge, and I mean it doesn't feel good when I run into it, but they seem to respect, and there have been times where I've had it turned off because if I've like been in and out of the paddock a lot, or if I'm cutting down stuff around it, like cutting down privet for them to eat, and I'm landing stuff on the fence, I turn it off. The idea is that it does not that they see white line and that equals ouch. And we started with, right now I've got them down to 3 strands, and Marcy keeps telling me, she's like, Carrie, you could get them down to 2 strands. And I was like, I like my 3. It doesn't take me that much longer to make one more loop, because Marcy's thing is she wants me to make this as easy as possible because she doesn't want me to burn out on it. So she saw the way I was first setting up paddocks that were admittedly a little bit crazy, and she was like, just do it this way, trust me. And so I have basically ended up adopting her strategy in most areas where it works. But she was like, I want this to be easy. So yeah, there's a lot of people who train them to even just 1 string, and they just see that string and they're like, that thing bites. I like the 3 because I feel like while it's not the most, certainly not completely predator proof, if a coyote comes around and puts his nose on that bottom line, he's going to wish he didn't. So to me, that's worth making the 3rd pass around the paddock to set it up. And they, I mean, they just, and most of the time they just don't test it. I had one that got out a couple of days ago, but I had failed to check that side of the paddock until later in the day, and I think a deer had ran into it and it pushed over a post, and basically the lines were on the ground, and I don't even think she got out as much as she was grazing and wandered across it, because as soon as she saw me and she looked up, she was like, oh crap, and she put herself back in, and and I fixed it. So yeah, I've actually had more problems with deer blasting through it and having to fix posts that get bent from them doing that.
Would you pick any other ruminants at this point above the sheep that you decided to do? And hey, we haven't even talked about what kind of sheep you are raising.
Yeah. So yeah, they are they're Katahdins, which is a meat breed. They shed. They do not develop wool that has to be shorn. They just shed it off when the weather warms back up. And I may still want to do goats in a few areas, but we'll see. As part of a land reclamation project. And then one thing Marcy suggested was to throw in like a Dexter cow. And that can help with your parasite load. It can be they call it I can't think exactly of the word, but basically if the parasites get on board the Dexter cow, those cows are not made sick by that barber pole worm. So it's like an end point. So the parasites are like, ooh, animal, until they're internal and they cannot, for whatever reason, they cannot do their parasitical BS. So so we may consider a Dexter cow at some point, either whether Marcy obtains one or whether we obtain one, because that
would be right in. Would that be right in with the sheep and Primrose?
Yeah.
They'd all just be a big happy family.
They'd be all in there together. Yep, my
So
my
you're
buddy
really
Bruce up in La Follette does that. Yep,
you're
he's
really
got.
trying to get my wife to move out in the area, aren't you?
Yeah, she's just gonna be out here just like camped out next to the sheep paddock all the time.
A cow, a donkey, and a bunch of sheep and baby
Yep.
sheep. And we
Yep.
might put goats down in the corner. I look out there and her smile is like ear to ear.
Yep, they are fun to watch. My buddy Bruce up in La Follette has, I'm not sure exactly of his numbers, but he has a Dexter cow, sheep, hair sheep, and a couple of goats all together, all in the same fencing. Everybody's happy. It's like, it looks like freaking scene out of Snow White up there with all the wildlife all around. Yeah. Pretty cool.
So just me, are you focused on the benefit to the land more than the meat? What is your intention when you're definitely you're a year into, or going on a year into this, a year, almost more than a half a year, I guess. When you have yours, what is going to be your intention with that? Is that land restoration? Is that a food source consistently, for sale, for emergency?
I feel like animals just belong on the land, and if we don't have the animals caring for it, then it becomes our problem. And I actually hate mowing. And when it comes to bush hogging, we're relying on an ancient tractor to be able to do that. So if I can have these animals working for me, and then I have a form of revenue, or even if it's just meat in my freezer, meat for my family, it's kind of all of the above. I'm not hyper focused on any specific benefit there. I just feel like that is the correct way to be treating the land at this time.
Nice. I mean, and that's, yeah. We did this after you had a foraging walk out of your place. I can imagine that doing this changes, having the sheep run on the land really changes what you can kind of walk around and point out just in the one pass through.
Yes. And what I'm hoping is that it's going to balance things out, because as the property improves, some things we will see less of, but we also have a lot of edge around here. There are multiple swales, there are terrace ditches, there are areas that I'm not ever going to get around to messing with too much, and edge always equals diversity. So I'm not too worried that between what the sheep consume, like some of the wildflowers, there'll be fewer of them in some areas, but there's other areas where they're going to populate better.
Right.
We've got a lot of like goldenrod and milkweed and stuff like that comes up in the pasture. So we may end up seeing a little bit less of that in some areas, but I also don't think I'm going to be moving these sheep so fast in their rotation that stuff won't have a chance to propagate. And also, there's nothing that stops me from just leaving a place ungrazed, you know.
And they'll pull stuff out of the seed bank too. Yep. With running through whatever they do and adding the fertility to everything and spreading stuff around. And
I expect to find a different set of cool stuff from that seed bank as well over the next few years.
Nice. Going to continue. It sounds like you're super happy with it. And would you consider doing this for someone else in the future, playing Marcy's role, or is this something that? Well, that was the easy answer.
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, I'm all about helping people develop their land in multiple ways. And as I kind of continue to dial in how I want to run this business, there will be some things that are less on my agenda, and being a ruminant mentor might become more of one. So I'm all about helping people keep their property healthy and productive in whatever way makes sense. And that there are so many people who are on the forums, various groups for sheep or whatever, and they're like, I want to get started, but I'm so scared. Like, well, what if you had a mentor?
Right.
Yep.
What if you had a mentor and a way that you could learn without the upfront capital investment, and you basically have a 3-year window to accumulate the stuff you need to going forward if you choose to go forward.
Exactly.
That's couple questions that came up through here. You've kind of touched on a couple already, but are there any other crazy sheep stories like the goat stories, or are they pretty well behaved?
They are largely well behaved and incredibly food motivated, so that helps a lot. I did see when we were talking about Parasite, Gingerbread Farms asked about ducks. Ducks scratching through the poop. We know we can do it with chickens. I'm assuming ducks would probably be maybe not as good because they don't scratch as much and they don't move the soil around. But I'd say, hey, if you have them, use them. Why not?
Right. Yeah, Gingerbread also asked, can you recharge that? So does that solar charger got an external battery on it?
No, not this.
It's all in contained.
Is there a
if you don't end up with sun, or if your solar panel takes a dump, or you just like on the fly to grab a new one?
Yeah, I probably just have to grab a new one. I have a smaller one that I've used, a smaller charger that I've used for the Premier One netting. It wouldn't run a paddock as big as the one I have them in right now, but it would run a smaller one. So I do have that as a backup. But yeah, that is, I'm assuming Marcy probably has a backup. So if we had an issue, I would just get with her and get another one. But that is definitely like when we're on our own with these, we will have a couple of different ways to either charge them or swap them out. I know Tactical and Nicole out at the Holler Homestead have been playing rotational chargers with some difficulty because these things they wear out. This brand, I'm going to look it up and send it to Tactical. He might want to take a look at it because this thing it got knocked off its post accidentally at one point when Primrose lost her shit for a minute early on. She bumped into the post and knocked it off, and the cover popped off. And I put it all back together, and it still works fine. So yay for that. And now I've got it where it can't get knocked off the post. But there's so many chargers on the market. I'm sure this is one of those things where you're going to pay what you get.
Yeah. I had a friend or a coworker that actually his job prior, he repaired a lot of fence chargers. Like he worked in electronic. Yeah, well, he worked on the guy he worked for. They did like computer repair and stuff like that. But one of the things they fixed was fence chargers because he found out that it was usually just one fuse on the inside of the thing that if anybody knew, they could just like swap it out immediately.
That's good to know. All right, nice.
Yeah, troubleshoot those things. That you can get a little zap if you don't discharge it when you start working on it, but.
Sure. Yeah. Just like, disconnect the negative terminal before you work on the car.
I mean, yeah, just you find out sometimes.
It's just 12 volts. It'll be okay.
You got anything else you want to add, man? We're kind of here in an hour. We've covered kind of how you got into it and how you're rolling with it. Are there any benefits or drawbacks that we didn't hit to the whole thing?
I think we pretty much covered the gamut there. I will say that it has, even despite the early difficulties, it has been easier than I thought. It was easier than I told myself it was going to be back when I was just reading Joel Salatin's books and studying it simply without any hands-on experience. It's worth the time you put in. It's worth the benefit to your property. And I would just like to see more people take this model and, use it, modify it a little bit, put it to work, try it out with people you trust, try with your friends first. I just think it's one of those things where we still, even in the homesteader realm, we still compartmentalize so much. And we're like, well, I have to have my own space and my own thing. And it's just this lone wolf thing is BS. So go to your groups, go to your gatherings and talk about, renting out your animals.
Right. Or exchanging your property for mentorship.
Yeah.
Yeah. talk to people. Weird, Carrie. When you talk to people, you learn interesting things, and you find opportunity.
Wild concept. And you might be able to get started online, but at some point you're gonna have to take your butt out the door and shake somebody's hand.
You might have to do that. A good place to do that is the Self-Reliance Festival.
It is, and I will see y'all there. We're gonna be that's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, if somebody made it this far and they're interested in and kind of they had more questions, I'm actually going to field some questions over on Nostr, I think, after the fact, because some people over there don't participate in the whole YouTube thing, so they weren't able to be in the live comments. But I might shoot some questions to you privately. But if somebody wanted to chat with you, where would they find you, and how do they follow your stuff? Because you got a bunch of cool stuff going on, not just these sheep. So where are people finding you?
We do a good bit out here. So go to strongrootsresources.com. While I'm in the middle of sorting out a way that I messed up my website, don't use the www. Just throw it into your search engine. Just throw those 3 words into your search engine and it'll pull it up. I messed up a DNS thing and I'm still trying to fix it. Or just email me, strongrootsresources@gmail.com if you'd like to get on the mailing list. You'll get notified of classes. You'll get notified of events that I'm up to, the occasional post update. This is an email that you will likely only get 2 or 3 the entire month. And we're going to be doing more foraging classes out here on the land. I will be at Self-Reliance Festival. I will be at the Living Free in Tennessee Spring Workshop and doing a foraging walk out there. And I am also, this just got announced today. If you're on the eastern side of Tennessee or anywhere, if you're within traveling distance of East Tennessee, the East Tennessee Homestead Alliance is putting together its first festival that'll be in Townsend, July 12th and 13th. And it looks like the coordinator over there, Sandy, has confirmed Joel Salatin as being the keynote speaker. Nice. I'll be one of the speakers, and I'll have a vendor booth as well over there. I'm a little blown away by the fact that I'm going to share a stage with Joel Salatin. I've been reading this man's work for 20 years. I'm
Did you get to meet him at SRF?
On the peripheral, it was kind of interesting because I'm real weird about just walking up to somebody who's famous and being like, "Oh, Joel Salatin." But I sat right behind him. I was actually sitting first. He came and he sat 1 row in front of me while Tim Cook was talking. And that man was taking notes on what Tim was saying the entire time. And so he's been one of my biggest influences. I am looking forward to talking to him a little bit more. I got to talk to him very briefly a few years ago at a Rogue Food Conference. But he's so generous with his time and knowledge. He's just a phenomenal individual. And so
I made Kyle. I forced Kyle to go talk to him, and I was able to make a GIF out of it. So it's absolutely the crowning moment of his life. So I was gonna say, like, you definitely should have grabbed him. You're right up his alley for sure.
Yeah, I mean, all I gotta tell him is that he's one of my primary influences, and I saw what he was trying to build, and I said, I'm on board, and I want to, be, kind of the next generation, because I'm basically the age of his kids. So, right. He's been that kind of leadership figure for me in the regenerative movement.
When I was trying to learn animal processing, chickens and rabbits, Daniel's videos those were the ones I always went back to. Were Daniel's videos on rabbits and chickens. I mean, Joel's videos are great. Daniel was like on the farm, and it was just something about the way he said it worked.
Yep. Everybody has to find their own way of. That's why in the content creator space, there's plenty of room for people, because everybody has a slightly different way of making sense of information. So. I'm trying to make sure I'm an effective communicator, and I'm getting better at that. And, I had 10 people come out in the rain today and walk around my farm with me in dismal weather so we could talk about plants. So that's fantastic. That's pretty encouraging.
Red Flyer was wondering if I streamed to Nostr. Not yet. But someone there was telling me that they watch with a YouTube client, so they just couldn't. They were going to watch, but they weren't going to be able to participate in the live comments. So I'm going to circle back and see if they had anything they had that they wanted questions answered. But I'm pretty sure we were pretty thorough. So, man, if you got anything else, feel free. But other than that, I think you covered all my questions that I had on my list.
Cool. Yeah, I think we're caught up. Hope people can make some of these events. And we are here locally in Knoxville. We're having our next event on March 3rd. So again, just holler at me. And I can get you details, directions, and all that good stuff. We always do a little tour, have some snacks. If the weather will cooperate, we'll have a little campfire. And it's a bartering opportunity. It's a networking opportunity for people who are here local.
Awesome. Carrie, I appreciate you coming on. I just want to let everybody know that they should check out my morning show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Central. You can join the coffee crew for a lively morning chat, and you really never know what we're going to talk about, but it can go 18 different directions every morning, and it's always fun. We always laugh. We always have a good time. So every Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Central, here on YouTube and all the other places. Carrie likes to sleep in the winter, and I get it. So
I'll see you guys more in the summertime on the live stream. Yep.
All right, man. I appreciate you hanging out, and I will definitely be talking to you more about this and Delinquent Scully and your place and SRF and all the things. So, man, thanks for hanging out for an hour, and we'll talk to everybody later.
Yep. Catch you guys later.
I can see the light.